Well, good morning, Bethel Church. For those of you who may not know, and like I said before, my name is Caleb, and I'm the next gen pastor here. And I'm actually going to have a couple of my youth students come up and help me really quick with something. Don't worry about what they're doing. We'll get to it eventually. But if you guys could just extend that out and try to go as far out as you can, that'd be swell and great for me. Hopefully it's not all twisted. I just need this end. And no, we're not playing tug of war or jump rope. Yeah, Hannah has the right one. There we go. This is good. Perfect. So, I'm going to try to keep this here. This is good. Now, as so many of you guys know, we are talking about how family matters. And family is something that is so important. And it's something that God designed. And it's something that He made and He gave us as something that we're supposed to be committed to, that we're supposed to cherish. And when I was growing up, I wasn't actually maybe super close with my family. There were a lot of choices and decisions that I made that kept myself busy. I played a lot of soccer, and I played all year round, 365 days a year. Sometimes I would have games on Christmas. And I ended up not spending a lot of time with my family. And when I got older, I kept making choices because life is made up of decisions and the choices that we make. And I had just finished my ministry school, and I was actually getting ready to be a missionary in Ireland. And I was raising funds so I could go do this. And so I was going to go speak at a whole bunch of camps. And so I start calling people, and people are connecting with me. And I start putting camps on the calendar. And I put 1, then I put 2, then 3, then 4, then 5, until I had 6 camps lined up. And then I looked at my calendar and I had realized that I had booked these 6 camps back to back to back to back to back to back. And these are not camps that are close by. One was in California, one was in Ireland, another one in Houston, then in North Dakota, then Minnesota. And I was going to be flying all over the place. And I was like, what have I done? But I said, I'm young. I can do this. So this is going to be exciting. And I made this choice to schedule all of these things. But I never actually asked God if it was what He wanted me to do. And I remember speaking at the first camp, and I flew over to Ireland, and the camp went really, really great. And I was excited because I got to tell those kids that I'd be coming back, and that I would get to see them again. And then I flew off to Houston. And when I got to Houston, none of my bags showed up. And I had no clothes, so I had to run to Walmart, and I wore Walmart clothes for the next week. And I had to buy a new bag, and I packed those. And I got to the next camp, and still no bags. And so I had to ask the camp, hey, do you guys have like a washer? Can I wash these? They're like, oh yeah. So I'm stuck in Walmart clothes for almost a month. And I said, what have I done with my life? And I was so exhausted, and I was tired. And I remember getting through the 3rd week of the camp I was speaking at, and I was like, I'm going to die. This is not good. And if there's anything that you know about me, and especially being a soccer player, we're a little bit dramatic. And so I wasn't probably going to die, but I was so tired. But I was excited because the next camp I was speaking at was a camp that my friends ran in North Dakota. And so I fly there, and I should have known better because my friends signed me up for a whole lot of extra things. And so not only was I speaking as the main camp speaker at night, but they wanted me to do some devotions in the morning. And then they wanted me to speak late at night to all of their leaders. And needless to say, the week that I thought was going to be a little refreshing, I was drained. And those last 2 weeks, I just kind of just buried through. And I had never been so tired in my life. And I think sometimes we can make choices and not even think about the choices that we're making. Because choices and the decisions we make determines where we will end up. All of those choices add up. And eventually, I ended up being just exhausted from this. And all of a sudden, all of these camps and all this stuff, I was busy. And I kind of lost sight of why I was doing all the things I was doing. But I kept doing it. And I want to read a story today from Ruth. And it's in chapter 1, and it's verses 6 through 18. So if you guys want to follow along, you can, or else it's in your outlines as well. But it says this. It says, "Then she arose with her daughters-in-law to return from the country of Moab. For she had heard in the fields of Moab that the Lord has visited his people and given them food. So she set out from the place where she was with her 2 daughters-in-law. And they went on the way to return to the land of Judah. But Naomi said to her 2 daughters-in-law, 'Go, return each of you to her mother's house. May the Lord deal kindly with you, as you have dealt with the dead and with me. The Lord grant that you may find rest, each of you in the house of her husband.' Then she kissed them, and they lifted up their voices and wept. And they said to her, 'No, we will return with you to your people.' But Naomi said, 'Turn back, my daughters. Why will you go with me? I have yet sons in my womb, that they may become your husbands. Turn back, my daughters. Go your way, for I am too old to have a husband. And if I should, I have hope, even if I have husband this night, should bear sons. Would you therefore wait till they were grown? Would you therefore refrain from marrying? No, my daughters, for it is exceedingly bitter to me for your sake. The hand of the Lord has gone out against me.' Then they lifted up their voices and wept again. And Orpah kissed her mother-in-law, but Ruth clung to her. And she said, 'See, your sister-in-law has gone back to her people and to her gods. Return after your sister-in-law.' But Ruth said, 'Do not urge me to leave you or to return from following you. For where you go, I will go. And where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God, my God. Where you die, I will die, and there will I be buried. May the Lord do so to me, and more also, if anything but death parts me from you.' And when Naomi saw that she was determined to go with her, she said no more." Now, I'm just going to pray for us, and then we're just going to kind of dive in today. Jesus, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for being a God that loves us, and loves us so much that even when we make choices and decisions that you never wanted for us, that you still give us chance after chance, and you're the person that can redeem us. And God, I thank you for this story of Ruth and Naomi. And I just pray that we're just able to hear their story today and to learn what it means to be committed to family. And Jesus, I just pray all these things in your name. Amen. Now, Naomi was someone that lived in Judah. And she had lived there probably her whole life. And she was there and she was just living her life. And eventually she got married to a man named Elimelech. And they ended up having 2 sons. And they had this family that they were committed to, that they loved their sons, and they wanted to see their sons grow up and marry people and have kids. And all of a sudden, one day in Judah, a famine strikes the land. And all of a sudden, Elimelech and Naomi are probably a little bit concerned for their sons. And they're just like, you know what, things will probably get better. It'll be okay, but the days turn into weeks, and the weeks turn into months, and the famine just stayed. And eventually, they make a decision, and they choose to leave their home. And they go to this place called Moab, a country just in the distance, because they hear that they don't have a famine, that they have food, that there is hope there. And they decide to pick up their life, and they decide to go there. And it's in this that Naomi and Elimelech, they make a choice. They make a decision to leave their people, their family, probably live there, their cousins, maybe even their moms and dads, and they choose to leave. But it doesn't seem, as we read all of Ruth, that they didn't ask God about this. They just made this decision kind of rashly and a little bit out of desperation. And it's kind of like this rope that I have here. If this part that is taped is our whole life, a lot of times we make decisions based off of our life here on earth, the things that affect us here. And that is what Naomi and Elimelech decided. They decided to make a choice based on this, rather than live for the eternity that God had for them. And they made a choice. And all of a sudden, they find themselves in Moab. And one day, Elimelech goes out, and he goes to work like he always does. But all of a sudden, he doesn't come back home. And some other people show up, and they tell Naomi, hey, Elimelech passed away. There was an accident, and he's dead now. And all of a sudden, Naomi, she has to try to make a choice of what is she going to do here. Is she going to go back home with her two sons? But she hadn't heard that things had gotten better at home, so she makes that choice to stay in Moab. And her two sons would grow up, and they would end up marrying some Moabite women. And what's interesting about this is if you read in Deuteronomies, it says that people from Moab would never enter in to the house of the Lord, that they would never be able to step foot into it, and that they wouldn't be allowed. And it seems, though, that Naomi probably knew this, but yet she chose to live in this place. And it was her choices that ended her up there. And it was a choice that she made for her family. And all of a sudden, her sons now have these two wives, Orpah and Ruth. And they live there for 10 years. And they're living, and everything's still going well. But all of a sudden, one day, her sons don't come home. And there was another accident, and her sons passed away. And all of a sudden, Naomi is left with just her two daughter-in-laws. She's left with this decision that she made so long ago to move her families because she thought it would be better for them. She thought that this would help them survive. And so many times we make decisions for our families where we're deciding to try to do what's going to help you right now. Like, I'm not going to look super far in the future. I'm just going to look at the right here and now. And the problem when we do that is we can get blinded by what's right in front of us. And we can forget what God has in store. And Naomi had forgotten about that. Naomi had forgotten that she served a God of hope, a God that was going to do the impossible for her. But she didn't see that, and she didn't realize that. And all of a sudden, what we just read, she's meeting with her daughter-in-laws, and she's telling them, hey, I want you guys to stay here and go back to your families. And I hope that you guys are able to remarry and you guys have good lives here. And Naomi is essentially trying to get rid of her daughter-in-laws because she's making the choice to go back home. And I think a little bit of Naomi is she doesn't want to bring back that past. She doesn't want to bring back the choices and the baggage that she has with her. And so instead, she's trying to get her daughter-in-laws to stay so that she doesn't have to answer the questions of, oh, who are these new people? Who are these Moabite women? And she's trying to get rid of them, but Ruth doesn't want to go. Ruth decides that she's going to stay. Ruth says, no, my people will be your people, and your God will be my God. And wherever you go, I'll go. And Ruth is persistent, and she commits to Naomi, but she also commits to Naomi's family, even though she's being told that there's not a lot of hope in Naomi's family anymore. But for some reason, Ruth decides to commit to it. She decides, you know what? No, I'm going to stay, and I'm going to see what's going to happen. And so Ruth goes with, and Orpah stays home. And as they get into town and they get back to Judah, all of a sudden the town is stirred because they're like, oh, isn't that Naomi? Aren't they the ones that left so long ago? And everyone knows who Naomi is, and they see Ruth with her, and they realize and can see the choices that she's made. And Naomi changes her name, and she tells people to call her Mara, because God has dealt with her bitterly. And she blames God for what has happened. She says almost that God is punishing her for her choices, for the things that she's done. And she just kind of wants to be left alone. And Naomi doesn't seem to go out. She just stays home. But Ruth takes care of her, and Ruth helps her. And one day Ruth says, hey, I want to go glean in this field over there. And Naomi goes, okay, yeah, you can go. And in that culture, what's interesting is the fact that Ruth probably wouldn't have actually been super safe going and doing this. That if someone would have found her, they could have rejected her, sent her home, took her things, or even assaulted her. But Ruth wanted to be committed to Naomi. And she wanted to do the right thing. And she wanted to get them both food so that they could be nourished. And so Ruth goes out, and she goes into this field, and she follows behind these workers. And she's just picking up the leftovers. And no one bothers her, though, that day. And she picks up a lot of things, and she's super excited. And all of a sudden, someone goes, hey, does anyone know who that girl is? And the workers go, oh, that's Ruth. She came home with Naomi. And this man that asked was Boaz. And Boaz goes, well, hey, why don't you ask her to come over here? And he allows her to eat with them. And then he tells her how excited he is that she's there, that he has heard her story, how she committed to their God, and how she had done all these things for Naomi, and that he was proud of her. And he tells her, hey, come back to my field, and you don't even have to just pick up the leftovers, but walk with my women that are collecting and get everything that you need. And Boaz also sends her home with bread that they had made and the leftovers of what they had just ate, and sends it home with her to give to Naomi. And when Ruth gets home, Naomi is so excited, but she's also a little confused. She's like, wait, how did all of this happen? Where did all of this stuff come from? And Ruth goes, well, I gleaned in this field owned by a man named Boaz. And Naomi, something sparks in her eye. And she goes, that's someone that we're related to. That's someone that could redeem us. That's someone that could redeem our family. And I'm sure Ruth, that day going out there, she wasn't even thinking about being redeemed. She wasn't thinking about the choices that she was making, that choice to go out that day was an internal choice, that it was part of God's plan, that God had something bigger to do with her that day. And she didn't see it then, but all of a sudden she goes back, and eventually Boaz takes a liking to her and wants to redeem Ruth and Naomi. But there's just a little bit of an issue. There's a problem because there's someone else that should redeem them first. Someone else in their family should do it. And so Boaz sends word to this other family member and has him come, and he tells him the situation and says, hey, you are the one that is in place first. You should redeem this land, and you should get what is Naomi's and what is Elimelech's. And this man goes, okay, I'll redeem it. But then Boaz goes, but before you completely say yes, you also will have to take care of Ruth, this Moabite woman. Will you still redeem it? And the man says, no, I can't do that. I won't do that. And Boaz goes, well, then I will. And he takes his sandal off to make this agreement. And he puts it in the other man's hand. And Boaz chooses to redeem Naomi and Ruth. Now, Ruth was someone that probably didn't deserve to be redeemed. She didn't earn it. She didn't walk into it being like, hey, I'm entitled to this. I deserve to be a part of this family. I deserve to do this. She didn't walk in that way. She just walked in there that day as a servant to pick up food so that she could survive and get by from day to day. But she had made that choice long ago that all of a sudden Naomi's God was going to be her God. A God that she probably didn't know, a God that she wasn't really sure who he was. But she decided to trust into the unknown. And when she decided to trust into this unknown, she couldn't have probably imagined what God was going to do. And she really didn't have any reference or frame of mind for what was going to happen, but she trusted anyways. And she listened to Naomi, and all of a sudden she finds herself being redeemed. And it was through her that all of a sudden a baby would be born named David, and he would become the king of Israel. And all of a sudden that king of Israel would have family after family, and through that family would come Mary and Joseph. And through Mary and Joseph would come Jesus. And what's so interesting is that a decision that Ruth made so long ago when there was no hope for her, when she didn't see the hope, she didn't see the plan, but she decided to trust in a God she didn't know. She decided to trust in people that she didn't quite maybe understand. But she said that day, hey, let your people be my people. Let your God be my God. Wherever you go, I'll go. And she made herself willing and available. And I wonder, and it makes me question, when we're raising up our families, are we making choices for the right here and now? Or are we making decisions for eternity? For the decisions that are going to impact so many people for years and years to come? I can think about my own life. And like I said, with my family, I wasn't super close with them, but some people that I was close with was my grandma and grandpa. And as I said last week, my grandma's name is Ruth. And we grew up calling her Grandma Ruthie. And Ruth, she always told me to trust in God no matter what. That when I didn't know what to do, I should pray. And it was because she said that's what her mom taught her. And that's what her mom taught her mom. And so on and so forth. And decisions that were made long before my grandma was ever on this earth. There were people telling her, hey, when you don't know what to do, trust in Jesus. When you don't know what to do, pray and ask him, seek Jesus, because he's going to make it all work out. That he has the plan. And so many people today, we look at the right here and now. We are always looking for what's next. And I'm probably the worst person about that. I love shoes, and my wife could tell you that I watch shoe reviews of shoes that I'll probably never buy. But I just want to watch because I need to know what's coming out next. And sometimes I buy shoes that don't fit me, don't feel good, but just because I want them. And I make these decisions because of the right here and now, because it makes me feel good. It makes me happy. The new colorway of Nike Vomero 18s, I want them. Or if I see the new Puma Nitros and I'm like, they put air into their foam. It's more squishy. I have to find out, even though I never had the other shoe before that. But I make these decisions. And I think so many times we can make decisions for our families that way, where we make that choice of what's going to feel good right now, instead of trusting maybe the plan that God has and the plan that he's going to do, because God's plan is always better than our own. And I am so impressed by all the graduates that we had up here, because so many of them put the work in for the 4 years or the 8 years or the year after year. And they were trusting in a plan that it wasn't going to happen right away. But they knew that their work and their dedication and their commitment was going to pay off. And I know that for many of you that are parents, it can be hard to commit sometimes to your kids because you see them make the mistakes they make. You see them make the friendships that they make. And you can see the hurt that might be coming that they don't even see. But the fact of the matter is that we have to be committed to that next generation. We have to be committed to them and walk alongside of them because God has a better plan. God has something amazing for this next generation. If I could look at my generation, I would be a little disappointed in us. I feel like my generation was set up to do amazing things for God. They were set up to lead. They were set up with all of the things that they could have. But I can tell you that the ministry school I went to, there's only me and one other person that is still pastors today. And I went to school with 15 other students that they all decided to walk away. They all decided not to pick up and look at what God had in store. And instead, they lived for the right now. And they forgot, and they're going to miss out on the eternity that Jesus has for them. And when I think about that, it makes me think of Ruth. It makes me think about what she committed to. And what are we committed to? Are we committed to our families? Are we committed to seeing kids know who Jesus is? Are we making those commitments to go wherever God wants us to go, to be where he wants us to be, and to let him be our God, our Savior, the person that can do the impossible? That when there is no hope, He can bring in hope. He is hope. He is love. And if there's anything that I've learned over my years, is that it's to trust in God's plan. It's to trust when we don't know what to trust about. It's to pray when I don't know what to say. And it's in those moments that my faith is restored. And it's through those years that even though I made a lot of choices way back when I was in high school, and I wasn't super close with my family, I get to make different choices today. And I get to spend that time with my mom. I get to spend that time with my dad. I got to spend more and more time with my grandma and my grandpa and my brothers and sister. And it's those decisions and those choices that we have to make. And we all have so many choices. But the real choice is what are we living for? Are we living for just the right here and the right now? Are we living for the eternity that Jesus has for us? Are we living for that? Are we just living for the world? And I just want to end just with one story. And it was when I was living in Ireland. And I was doing these clubs, these kids clubs. We'd go out into their neighborhood and we put on essentially a VBS for them. And this one neighborhood it was in one of the roughest parts of Cork City called Mayfield. And it's pretty much the projects of Ireland. You don't really want to be known or be from there. And we show up and we had almost 50 kids come out to this club, just running from their houses and all sorts of stuff. And we had a really, really amazing week. And I got to meet this girl named Amy and her brother Mihal. And Amy and Mihal, they loved going to club. They would go home every night and they would sing the songs that we taught them. And their mom, she would hear these songs and she'd be like, that's interesting. And she'd walk into their bedroom and she'd listen and she'd ask them, hey, like, where do you guys learn that? And she'd be like, well, we learned it from those people that came today. And that funny American, I think his name started with a C. And eventually their mom, she stopped me. And she said, hey, I just want to say thank you for what you guys have done this week. Because she said, there's not a lot of hope here. My kids, the dreams that they have, I'm pretty sure that they're never going to come true. That they're never going to happen. Because people from here where we live, we don't usually amount to anything except the next generation being right where we are today. And she asked me a question, and she said, Caleb, I would love it if my kids could live with you instead. If my kids could go with you. And I wasn't in a position to do that. I couldn't just take her kids. I couldn't take Amy or Mihal. But what I did do is I set up a meeting. I said, hey, how about I come back every single week? And we have lunch and coffee. And I tell you guys the greatest hope there ever is. And I sit down and I would show up every week and I would tell them the stories from the Bible. And this family started going to church. They started to get plugged in. And eventually they made it out of Mayfield. And they got to leave that place. And Amy got to go to school and got to go to college, which she never thought she'd be able to do. Mihal, her brother, is playing soccer over in Spain. And all of a sudden, those dreams that they had, all of a sudden they said, Caleb, that little bit of hope from you telling us stories about who Jesus is, it changed our lives. And it changed the direction and the pattern that our lives were going on. And it changed our family. Our family didn't have a lot of hope, but all of a sudden now our hope is in Jesus. Our hope is in the plan that Jesus has for us. And last summer, I got to go back there, and I ended up getting to meet and see Amy again. I got to see her newborn baby boy, who she was so excited to show me. And she's like, Caleb, look at how far I've come. And I can think about all the choices that I've made in my life. And I would say that that's probably one of my best ones. To be willing to sit down with a family that didn't have a lot of hope and didn't know what was going to be in store for them, or they thought that they knew what was in store. They kind of thought, like Naomi did, that there wasn't a lot of hope, that there was no point in seeking redemption. But see, God's story is better. God's story for us all is so much better. And I hope today that you guys, and if you have families here today, that we would choose not to live for just the right here and now, but choose to live with our choices with eternity in mind. When we choose to serve, when we choose to serve in the church, we have to realize that these kids are going to grow up and they're going to take our spots. Our ceiling, the things that we've learned, is going to be their floor. That's where they get to start from. And if we invest, if we teach them the things of God and who Jesus is and what Jesus has done in our lives, the amazing things that can happen. And it's not the short game. It's not the thing that we're going to see right away. But all of a sudden, 10 to 20 years from now, all of a sudden when those stories come through of, hey, I remember that story you told me when I was 6 years old, and I decided to make your God my God. And I decided that I was going to go wherever he would send me. When those stories happen, when the next generation picks that up, they're going to bring Jesus farther than any of us ever will. They're going to meet people that we are never going to meet. And they're going to do the impossible because God is on their side. But it starts with our choices. It starts with, what are we going to choose? Are we going to choose to live for the things of the world, for the things right here and now? Are we going to live for Jesus and the eternity that he has? And so, guys, I'm just going to pray for you, and then we are going to end. And I think the band's going to come back up and sing one more song. But you guys just bow your heads, close your eyes. Jesus, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for being a God that redeems us, a God that has a bigger plan, that even when we don't see it or we don't understand, you're the person that brings hope into our families, into our lives, into situations where we don't see any hope or have any dreams left. You're the person that brings life to those. And God, I just want to pray for all these families today that no matter where they've been, no matter what choices that they've made, that they can make different ones today. And they can choose to make decisions for eternity. And Jesus, I just pray that you would just encourage everyone this week. And Jesus, I pray all these things in your name. Amen.